I never thought much about the small tin wind-up toys my son played with every day. Little robots with painted-on smiles, squat cars with clock-spring motors. They seemed harmless, almost charming in their simplicity. At least, they had been, until my son started acting strange. One evening, as I passed his open bedroom door, I heard his small voice carrying on a one-sided conversation. He was addressing them, the toys lined up neatly at the foot of his bed, like dutiful soldiers. At first, I found it endearing, his vivid imagination springing to life. He had always been a creative kid. I chalked it up to him pretending, maybe practicing the kind of whimsy I had long since grown out of. Yet, as the weeks passed, something about those interactions unsettled me. It wasn't just the frequency, it was the tone. A seriousness laced his words, like he wasn't creating dialogue, but responding to it. When I asked him about it, he shot me a puzzled look, as if I should already know. He spoke haltingly, almost embarrassed, about Mr. Sparks and Whirly, and the rest of the gang having good ideas. I laughed it off in front of him, but something about his demeanor stuck. It wasn't innocence. It was conviction. One evening, I peeked into his room after he'd gone to bed. The tin robots and cars were arranged differently, not scattered like forgotten toys, but placed deliberately, almost ceremoniously, in a tight little circle. I dismissed the chill running up my spine, convincing myself my son had done it before falling asleep. And if I hadn't, well, a bump of a foot or gravity, maybe. But then there was the incident with the cat. Our poor, curious Tabby was always poking his nose where it didn't belong. And on this evening, he'd been drawn to my son's toys. I heard the telltale scratch of paws on metal, followed by a yelp. When I rushed to the room, the cat darted out, tail puffed like a bottle brush. My son smiled from his bed, saying only that Mr. Sparks doesn't like cats. I inspected the toys then, running my hands over their small tin bodies for sharp edges or anything that might have hurt the cat. They felt cold, colder than inanimate objects should, and the dormant wind-up mechanisms inside almost seemed to hum, though I couldn't be sure if I heard it or imagined it. The next day, I found one of my son's wind-up cars, upside down in the hallway, one wheel slowly turning as though it were trying to right itself. My son hadn't been playing there. I was sure of it. I told myself it had been bumped or rolled by accident. But as I kneeled to pick it up, I could feel the faint vibration of its motor still alive, as if resisting the stillness. At dinner that night, I tested my son casually, asking about his toys. What he told me stopped me cold. He said, "Don't bother them, Dad. They don't like you." He said it matter-of-factly, chewing his spaghetti without looking up, as if delivering a warning issued by someone or something else. My unease reached a peak later that week during a particularly quiet night. I was downstairs reading when I swore I heard faint clicking sounds from above. It was rhythmic, uneven, like small feet tapping across the wooden floor. I froze, staring at the ceiling. My son was asleep by then. I'd checked. The logical part of my brain begged me to stay put, but something primal, something in the shadowed part of myself, demanded I go see. I crept up the stairs slowly, each step sounding too loud, too intrusive. The hallway was dark, save for the thin wedge of light spilling from my son's room. Inside, he was murmuring again, his voice low and conspiratorial. This time, I didn't linger by the door. I pushed it open. There they were, his toys, scattered but purposeful. Every robot's face seemed tilted toward me, their permanent painted grins looking sinister in the dim glow of his bedside lamp. My son looked up lazily, as if he had expected me. The cord of one of the wind-up robots was in his hand, the key spinning in tight rotations. "They said you'd come," he said, almost sleepily. I didn't realize at first what was happening. The toys began shifting, their mechanisms grinding softly. The wind-up cars rolled across the hardwood floor, while the robots seemed to twitch in place, uncertain but undeniably moving. My son watched them with that same eerie calm, as though he were supervising their coordination. I tried to grab him then, to scoop him out of harm's way, though I wasn't entirely sure what I was protecting him from, or protecting myself from. But the moment I stepped forward, one of the robots fell to its side and rolled beneath me, causing me to stumble backward hard, nearly splitting my skull on the edge of the dresser. My head throbbed, my vision dimming for half a second, but something pulled me upright just as quickly. An undeniable energy in the room, a pressure rising like an oncoming storm. My son sat cross-legged on the bed, and in his childish yet serious voice, he spoke. "Mr. Sparks is very angry now." I forced myself to stand anyway, to ignore the sting in my back and the irrational fear bubbling up my throat. I reached for the toy nearest me, a little red car, and flung it hard against the far wall, its small tin body crumpling on impact. For a moment, there was silence. Then I felt it, a cold gust that shouldn't exist indoors, brushing the hair on my arms. The toys didn't stop. If anything, the destruction of the car seemed to spur them on. I counted 4 robots actively walking toward me now, their stiff-legged gait precise and mechanical. The rest were pulling themselves together, rising from where they'd fallen. My son didn't move, but his eyes tracked them, like someone overseeing a worker bee colony. And then, just as one of the robots reached my foot, I heard the voice, low and distorted, but real, slithering out from the cluster of toys. It wasn't my son. It wasn't anything human. It simply said, "You shouldn't have done that."